Cruises are strange when you think about them. Thousands of people packed onto a floating hotel, surrounded by nothing but water, all pretending that there are buffets, pool decks, and little towels. Nothing bad can really happen. But once you're far enough from land, everything feels different. A locked door feels more locked. A hallway feels longer. A stranger watching you feels harder to get away from. These are two real cruise stories for people who thought they were going on vacation. I went with my older sister Nell because she had a messy engagement and didn't want to sit at home pretending that she was fine. I wasn't exactly in a vacation mode either. I had been working 2 jobs for almost a year, and the idea of sleeping in and eating food that I didn't cook and not answering my emails almost sounded fake. The ship was headed towards Cozumel and Costa Maya. Nothing fancy, but nice enough. Our cabin was on deck 8, interior room, no windows, just 2 little beds, a bathroom the size of a closet, and that constant low humming sound ships make when you stop noticing after the first day. The first 2 days were normal. We drank overpriced frozen drinks, lost $20 in the casino, and took pictures on the staircase like everyone else. Nell seemed lighter for the first time in months, so I relaxed too. The weirdness started on the 3rd night. We had gone to one of those lake comedy shows, and afterwards Nell wanted pizza. I was tired, so I told her I'd be back to the room and she could meet me there. It was maybe 12:40 a.m., and the hallways on the cabin deck were quiet in the weird cruise ship way, where you could hear carpet under your own feet. As I got closer to our cabin, I noticed a man standing near the ice machine. He was probably in his 40s, tan, wearing a red polo and khaki shorts. Very ordinary looking. The kind of man that you'd pass 10 times on vacation and never remember. I didn't think anything of it until he said my name. Not excuse me, not hey, my actual name. I stopped without meaning to. He smiled and said, "Maren, right? Nell's sister?" For a second, I thought maybe Nell met him somewhere. That happens on cruises. People talk to strangers constantly, but something about the way he was standing there felt planned. I asked if I knew him. He said his name was Victor and that he had been talking to Nell at the pool earlier. He said she told him to check on me because I had left the show early. That didn't sound like Nell. My sister is friendly, but she's not send a random man to our cabin friendly. Then he said, "You're in room 8139, right?" That's when I felt something in my chest go tight. I hadn't told him my cabin number, and Nell wouldn't have either. I lied and said no. I said he got the wrong person. His smile stayed the exact same, but his eyes changed. He looked past me at our cabin door, then back at me. I had already stopped directly in front of it like an idiot. I told him I was going to get security. He gave me this little laugh and said, "Relax, I'm just being nice." I walked past our door instead of opening it. I went all the way to the elevators, then down to the pomade deck where there were still people around. I called Nell over the ship app, but she didn't answer. Then I called her on her regular number, which also didn't work because we were at sea. For about 10 minutes, I felt ridiculous. I kept telling myself I had overreacted. Then Nell finally showed up with pizza, annoyed that I wasn't in the room. I asked if she knew a man named Victor. She said no. We went straight to guest service. At first, they treated it like a misunderstanding. The woman at the desk smiled too much and said people often make friends on board and forget names. Then I told her that he knew my exact cabin number. That changed her face. Security walked us back to our room. Nothing looked disturbed. But when one of them checked the door lock records, he got very quiet. Our cabin door had been opened twice while we were gone. Not by either one of our cards. By a staff key. They moved us to another room that night and told us not to discuss it with other passengers. The next morning, we were asked to identify the man from the security camera stills. We did. He wasn't named Victor. He was traveling alone under a different name, and the cruise line wouldn't tell us much more. But one security officer, probably because he felt bad for us, said that there had been complaints from 2 other women about someone approaching them near their rooms and knowing personal detail he shouldn't have known. The part that still bothers me is what was missing from our cabin. Not money, Not jewelry, nothing obvious, but Nell's old room key from the hotel we stayed at in Galveston was gone from her purse. So was a luggage tag with her home address on it. We spent the last 2 days of a cruise barely leaving the new room. Every time I heard footsteps outside, I stopped breathing for a second. When we got back, Nell changed her locks. Maybe that was dramatic, maybe it wasn't. I've been told the man probably bribed or tricked a crew member or somehow stole one of the staff's cards somehow. I don't know. What I do know is that on a ship with thousands of people, he found me in the hallway, said my name like we were friends, and knew exactly which door was mine. And for whatever reason, he wanted me to open it. I was 31 when my wife and I took a cruise for our anniversary. Her name is Elise. We've been married for 6 years at a time, and honestly, the trip was her idea. I'm not really a cruise person. I like knowing I could leave a place when I want. But Elise had grown up watching those travel shows where everyone eats lobsters and watches the sunset from the balcony, so I booked one. The ship left from Miami and was supposed to stop in the Bahamas and then come back after 4 nights. Our cabin was on deck 10 with a balcony. The room itself was small but nice, and the balcony had 2 chairs and a little table bolted to the floor. On the first night, we sat out for almost an hour just listening to the water and watching lights from the coast disappear behind us. The cabin next to us had a balcony too, separated by one of those metal partial walls. You can't see through them, but you can hear more than you'd expect. The couple next door arguing constantly. Not loud enough where we could make out every word, but enough to where we heard the tone. The woman sounded angry and scared. The man sounded calm in a way that made it worse. Ever so often, we'd hear something hit the wall, then silence. Elise wanted to make a report that first night. I said we should wait, which I regret. The second night, we were getting ready for dinner when we heard a woman crying through the walls. Not dramatic crying, more like someone trying not to be heard. Elise knocked on the partial and asked if she was okay. Everything went quiet. Then a man next door said, "She's fine." His voice was so close, it sounded like he was standing right against the divider. We called guest service after that. They said they would send someone up to check. About 30 minutes later, we heard a knock next door, then muffled talking, then laughter from the man. Whoever came to check left about 2 minutes later. That should have been the end of it. But around 2 a.m., I woke up to scraping sounds. At first, I thought it was one of those balcony chairs sliding from the ship rocking, but the seas were calm. Elise was asleep. The room was dark except the thin blue light from the TV screensaver. Then I heard it again. A slow scrape. Metal on metal, coming from the balcony. I got out of bed as quietly as I could, moved the curtains just enough to look. There was a hand on our balcony railing. For a second, my brain couldn't understand what I was seeing. Then the hand appeared and a man pulled himself around the divider from the cabin next door. It was the husband. He wasn't looking into our room at first. He was looking down, like he was checking where his foot was. His shirt was torn at the collar, and one side of his face was red. He moved carefully, not like someone who's drunk, but like someone trying not to make a sound. I stepped back so fast I hit the desk. He looked up. We stared at each other through the glass for maybe 2 seconds. Then he smiled. I grabbed my phone and called security while yelling for Elise to wake up. The man didn't run. That was the disturbing part. He just stood at our balcony, one hand on the door handle, watching me. Our balcony door was locked, thank God. When I started shouting, that security was coming. He climbed down the divider towards his room. Security arrived fast this time. They went next door. Nobody answered. They opened the cabin. The woman was gone. The man told them that she left after an argument and was probably somewhere on the ship cooling off. He acted annoyed, not worried. That bothered me even more. The ship searched for her for hours. They found her just before sunrise in a crew-only stairwell 2 decks below us. She was alive, but barely responsive, with head injuries and no shoes. Her name was Corrine. She later told ship security that her husband had taken her keycard and phone after an argument. She tried to get away through the hallway, but he dragged her into the service stairwell. So why had he climbed into our balcony? That was the part I couldn't stop thinking about. Later, one of the officers said that they believed he thought Corrine had thrown something onto our balcony before she escaped. Maybe her phone, maybe a note, maybe proof of what he had done. We checked the balcony in daylight and found a small silver bracelet wedged between one of the chair legs. Elise remembered hearing something hit the floor earlier that night, but thought it was the next door. That bracelet had Corrine's name engraved on the inside, along with her phone number. I don't know if she tossed it over, hoping someone would find it, or if it fell during the struggle. Either way, that tiny thing was probably the reason he came onto our balcony. People talk about balcony rooms like they're peaceful, and most of the times they are. But at nights, with the ocean below you, and nothing but a thin divider between you and the person next door, you start to realize how exposed you really are. I still remember his face through the glass. Not angry, not panicked, smiling like he had caught me somewhere I wasn't supposed to be.